to Libya and Saudi Arabia. New ruling coming just hours after CNN reported that the White House was actually planning to use a large U.S. military plane to deport a group of undocumented immigrants to Libya. That's a serious flight. But Libya, for its part, tells CNN there have not been talks with the Trump administration about accepting migrants, and one official says they do not want the migrants brought to their country. Kristen Holmes is live from the White House. Kristen, I mean, it's now not just El Salvador, right? You're talking countries like Libya, Saudi Arabia. What can you tell us about Trump's plans for these new deportation flights?
Well, look, there's still a lot of details that we are trying to get answers from the administration on. I mean, as you mentioned, we did report this morning that the administration was planning on moving forward with this idea of taking a group of undocumented migrants and bringing them to Libya. There were a lot of questions that went unanswered. One, when was this flight leaving? Was this a one-time flight, or was this now a plan that they were going to bring multiple flights, multiple groups of migrants to Libya, to Saudi Arabia? And we still don't have the answer to this. So what we do know is that this immigration advocacy group filed this emergency petition to stop these flights from happening, saying that it was going to go against all of their rights. And this judge ruled in their favor, saying they would actually go against a directive he previously gave, which was that these people who are being deported, if they were going to a country that was other than their home country, they had to be able to have notice, and they also had to be able to oppose this before they were actually put on a plane. But I do want to note one thing here, Aaron. We still don't know if this plane took off. And from this petition, it said that if there were flights that already had gone over to Libya by the time that this was ruled on, that those migrants be brought back. But we don't know right now the current state of this.
Right, which obviously is so crucial in the context of the fiasco with El Salvador. We are learning, Kristen, also some new comments from the Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts. I just referenced him a moment ago, literally just finding out that he said this. Trump obviously has been attacking judges who rule against him. The Chief Justice has just spoken out. Let me just play what he just said.
In our Constitution, judges and the judiciary is a co-equal branch of government, separate from the others, with the authority to interpret the Constitution as law. And strike down, obviously, acts of Congress or acts of the president. And that innovation doesn't work if it's not, the judiciary is not independent. Its job is to obviously decide cases, but in the course of that, check the excesses of Congress or of the executive, and that does require a degree of independence.
He knows the weight of every word. Kristen, the words there carry a lot of weight and come amid major tensions with Trump, and so significant to come from the Chief Justice.
Right, and we don't usually hear him weighing in on politics. And of course, as you say, he knows the weight of every word. He never said Donald Trump's name. He was incredibly diplomatic when he was talking. In fact, he was actually asked about this idea that people should be impeached, and he referred back to a previous statement. He never really speaks out of turn, and everything that he says is incredibly deliberate. We know this from years of covering him. But as you said, this is coming at a time where even just this morning, Donald Trump was railing against judges. He has called for impeachment. Not just that, his followers have doxed judges. We know judges have had to have increased security, particularly around immigration, saying that they were trying to stand in his way, accusing them of being liberal judges. This is a very important context around Roberts speaking out at this time. I do want to note one thing. It was really interesting to me listening to his interview, Donald Trump's interview over the weekend, where he started to get very deferential to the Supreme Court. After building up all of this tension with the court system, you could hear him over and over again repeating, well, we're going to do what the Supreme Court says. Our lawyers are going to do what the Supreme Court says. But Aaron, as we've seen, they have really used the ambiguity in a lot of these Supreme Court rulings to their advantage. And some people believe they're not exactly doing what the Supreme Court says. They say they're following the order, but it's ambiguous.
Right. And of course, if we're talking about the word facilitate, there was not ambiguity in the way they were using it. All right. Thank you very much, Kristen.
Joining us, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin, former president of the National Organization for Women and former executive director of the National Employment Lawyers Association, Terry O'Neill, chief strategist for the Bush-Cheney 2004 presidential campaign, and senior MSNBC political contributor Matthew Dowd, and law professor at University of California, Davis, Mary Ziegler. She is the author of Personhood, the New Civil War over reproduction. Lisa, I will start with you. Will you just set the scene for us with this dismissal, this arguing for a dismissal?
So, Katie, folks will remember that last year the Supreme Court had this case before it, but a different iteration of this case. It was brought originally by a group of doctors that formed an organization specifically to bring this suit in front of a favorable judge, Matthew Kacsmaryk in Amarillo, Texas. But even though he initially enjoined the FDA's approval of mifepristone, which would have taken it off the shelf, the Supreme Court did something surprising, and they said that the doctors who brought the suit never had standing or a requisite injury to sue in the first place. And that should have gotten rid of the case, but for the fact that 3 states, Missouri, Indiana, and Kansas, if I'm wrong, Mary will correct me.
Missouri, Idaho, and Kansas.
I had the I. Basically moved to take over the case in their own names. And now, since January, first the Biden administration, 4 days before then President Biden left office, and now the Trump administration making the same argument. They can't just take over the case and have it exist in Texas because they don't have what's called venue there. It's not an appropriate place for them to litigate. There's nothing that they have as those states that would justify them litigating in Texas. They also say the states don't have standing of their own because they haven't been economically harmed, and there's no proof that the FDA's regulation is interfering with their existing state laws. So again, the Trump administration trying to get rid of this suit. But I do think it's not just a what, but a how, meaning they may not want to get rid of mifepristones being on the market through the courts if they can do it in another, more palatable way, particularly if they can use the FDA to gather a body of scientific evidence. And I will say pro-abortion advocates say there is no scientific evidence that mifepristone hurts people, but they may decide to do it more slowly through the FDA rather than resort to the courts where they know a decision like this would be hugely unpopular.
Mary, I referenced your argument about how this is just buying time for them. Is it your belief that they're buying time to do what Lisa's laying out, to find an argument against an FDA approval of mifepristone?
Yeah, I think I don't know if President Trump has actually decided what to do about mifepristone, but I do know that he doesn't want the decision to be made by Matthew Kacsmaryk right now. We've seen, as far as abortion is concerned, that Trump wants to control the timeline and the substance of what happens, and this lawsuit is pushing the Trump administration to say and do things it may not want to do in an inopportune moment right before the midterms. One of the things that's really striking about this filing is the Trump administration says absolutely nothing about the substance of what should happen to mifepristone, does not dispute any of the plaintiff's arguments on the merits. So the administration is very much leaving the door open to agreeing with those arguments on the merits if and when Trump feels is the right time. We just can be confident that he doesn't think that time is now.
So, Terry, they're asking the court to dismiss this case. They don't have the power to dismiss it themselves. It's in front of Judge Kacsmaryk in Amarillo, Texas, and he has been notoriously favorable toward anti-abortion lawsuits. Do you foresee a chance that he could say, no, I'm going to let this case continue?
Who knows what Judge Kacsmaryk might do? He has a history of being viciously hostile to the lives and the health and the well-being of women. And he sweeps in, of course, transgender individuals and non-binary individuals with his hostility to women's access to reproductive health care. I live in Tennessee, a state with one of the strictest abortion bans. The hostility here is so awful. The state is even refusing to publish information about the impact of the strict abortion ban here that has been on women. What we know generally is that every abortion ban, every law against abortion inevitably kills women. That is, it increases the rate of preventable death of pregnant people due to complications of pregnancy and childbirth. Right. So when President Trump plays politics with women's reproductive health and with their lives, I'm not impressed by his playing politics in this particular case. I think we have to understand that, like the vast majority of Republican.
A few kids that have had cancer, giving them less than 24 hours sometimes to make that decision. And at this specific facility in Louisiana, people are not able to talk to their lawyers oftentimes. They're not getting the medical treatment they need, and there are huge overcrowding issues. And so for all those reasons, we were asking for an investigation.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio recently said that the Trump administration wants to send undocumented immigrants as far away as possible so they can't come back. What do you make of this agreement with Libya that Priscilla was just talking about?
First of all, it's just bizarre, but it's also very dangerous for these people. Remember, Donald Trump, during his campaign, talked about deporting criminals. And now he's going after kids with cancer, also people that have been here a long time, that have been paying taxes, taking care of their families, some of them that have been running businesses even. And now he's talking about sending these people to Libya. That's why you've seen his numbers on immigration fall, because Americans understand cruelty and gratuitous cruelty when they see it.
His numbers have fallen, but the Democratic Party's numbers have not gone up as a reaction. Why do you think your party is still so unpopular, and especially on this issue of immigration? President Trump remains polling okay, not as well as he was before on this issue. It's still one of his better issues, though.
Well, I mean, look, when you lose as a political party, I think when you lose the presidency, when you lose the Senate, when you lose the House, there is obviously an issue with message and what you're communicating to the American people. And I think that the Democratic Party obviously has to talk to the American people about what we stand for, the fact that we're trying to build opportunity in this country for everyone. But at the same time, that doesn't absolve Donald Trump of all of his incredible failures and the damage that he's bringing upon the country.
Defeats keep coming for Trump, and it's really centered on the idea that judges are saying, even judges that are Republicans, even judges appointed by Trump, even judges that on a lot of isolated issues and even cases in the past have, ruled in Trump's favor. They're saying, sir, you're not a king. That's just not something that we have here. We don't have an absolute monarch. This isn't 1600s Russia. This isn't 1200s, 1100s England or France. Like, you are not an absolute monarch. You're not even a king with nobles. You have a constitution that clearly defines your powers and the limits therein. And you just can't do this. You can't just go telling us to not hear cases. You can't just send people to foreign countries without due process, even if they end up being bad guys. Like, this is the thing. In some of these cases, it's not even about defending the particular person. They might be an abhorrent person. But the thing with civil liberties and fascists like Trump is they always try to use the thin edge of the wedge. Go after somebody who's not very sympathetic. And then before you know it, like the Niemöller poem from the about the 1930s in Germany, you never speak up for the people you don't care about, and then no one's left to speak up for you. And what we are seeing from some judges, including conservative judges, is a saying, Donald, you are not king. You're not above the law. Many of us will agree with you on cases in the future. Many of us supported, for example, your right-wing attack on women's basic rights. But despite us also being right-wing nutjobs in some cases, we do not have a king. We have a president, and he should act like one.